Hi, this is the second week of Advent, and I hope that you have had opportunities where you have been able to reflect on what it means, that it's not just a time of busyness and preparation and gift buying. And I hope, in fact, that it is full of moments where you can reflect on what God is doing in your life and in the world today. Our author has invited us to look at both Gospels where the birth narrative is in the Bible, and that's in Matthew and in Luke. The story of Elizabeth and Zechariah, which we explored last week, is found in the Gospel of Luke. Today's story about Joseph is found in the Gospel of Matthew. Now, the Christmas story is a merging of both of these Gospels. And the truth is that the people who were reading Luke's gospel had not read Matthew's, and the people who were originally reading Matthew's gospel had not read Luke's. And so it's almost an injustice for us to try to combine them into one. So let's look at them separately. Luke's story. Luke's story is truly the nativity story. It begins with a census that's going to be taken, and that they need to travel to Bethlehem. There's an inn, which there's no room, and the angels are going to proclaim to the shepherds that there has been a birth that has happened in a manger. And this story is filled with wonder and joy in the midst of the night. Now, if we look at Matthew's gospel, instead the focus seems to be on the world, the world that Jesus is entering, where lineage matters, who you belong to, whose family you are a part of. This is a world where leaders are threatened enough to commit murder. There is oppression and fear and violence. Matthew begins his gospel with the lineage of Jesus. Well, actually, it's the lineage of Joseph who adopts Jesus. So he begins with Abraham, the great patriarch, and he lists 14 generations from Abraham to David, and then 14 more from King David to the exile, and then 14 more generations from the exile to the birth of Jesus Christ. And so there's been 42 generations that are listed here. Matthew wants us to know that this birth came at just the right time, that there was a plan involved, and it's been going on from the beginning of time. From the minute that God made the covenant with Abraham, saying, I will be your God and you will be my people. That covenant that is followed from generation to generation to generation is God's promise that I will be with you. And Matthew is saying that's exactly what God is doing here. God is fulfilling that covenant promise. I will be with you in Jesus Christ. What Matthew does is he begins with that, and then he begins to tell the story of the birth of Jesus. But how he tells this story is a little bit different. He is using this. He's the narrator, but we enter into the story almost in the middle. Mary is already pregnant, and Joseph knows it. Can you imagine what he was thinking? Yeah, we probably can, especially because we're told that he was going to divorce her quietly. Being a righteous man, he is going to get rid of her quietly. Now, legally, he could have her stoned, and he chooses to instead divorce her quietly. He's trying to protect her, I think. Um, and then he has a dream where uh, the angel of God tells him, in fact, what's really happening here. And the angel gives him this great responsibility that you will name him Jesus. You, Joseph, will name him Jesus. He's not going to be your son, but you get to name him. And so we see that the very first act that Joseph does is he obeys God. He names Jesus. He adopts him as his own. He gives him the lineage of David. Notice that throughout the story that the only speakers are the narrator and the angel. Now we follow, if you continue to read in Matthew's gospel, you'll discover the Magi. This is where the wise men, or the Magi, were actually astrologers, Persian astrologers. They are going to follow a star and they're going to travel to Jesus. The star will lead them to Jesus, where these Magi will present Jesus with these gifts: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. King Herod is threatened by the fact that there is a new king in town, and he will put an order into place where all of the boys under the age of 2 in Bethlehem will be murdered. This is the world that Jesus is entering into. In Matthew and in Luke, we find that Elizabeth speaks, and even Zechariah speaks, especially after Jesus is born. He has this whole prophecy. Mary, we're going to see next week and explore a little bit next week, but she has a song that she sings. The angel speaks. Everyone speaks except for Joseph. Notice that throughout Scripture, Joseph never speaks. He's never given words. Now we know he speaks. We know that he has told his story. We know about his dreams, so we know he told his story to someone. We know he names Jesus, and so he has spoken to do that. But none of the writers in Scripture, which is inspired by God, give him words to say. I wonder, as I always do, I wonder why. Is Joseph actually like most of our dads? Dads, a few words, strong and silent. Dads who don't always know what to say or how to put into words what they feel. And so it ends up being up to us, sons and daughters, to pay attention and to watch them, to notice what it is they do, and to see their actions, and to recognize that it is by their actions that they are loving. We learn by their examples. Now, maybe that doesn't describe your dad or stepfather, but I think it might describe Joseph. Strong and silent, not always knowing what to say, but faithful, discerning, and obedient. Joseph has a lot to teach us without ever saying a word.